Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Jessica McLaughlin. Now, some of you may have heard this has been fairly prominent, in the news, is that there was a young lady, I believe 24 years old. Her name is Jessica McLaughlin, and she had been, assaulted, attacked at a 7-Eleven on June 24, 2025. And she had been, I guess, like suffocated, or in a way, she had somebody was basically one of the employees, or I think it was the manager, actually had pretty much sat on Jessica, on her torso, chest area, and caused her to stop breathing. She didn't have oxygen going to her brain for like 10 minutes. Now, like around 8 days later or something, she had been, officially declared brain dead as a result. And I want to do a video on this. I don't have a time of birth or even a birth date for Jessica. So I'm doing the chart on the event, for the assault on Jessica and the attack on her on that day. Now, if anybody happens to find, her birth date or anything, a birthday on Jessica, you can contact me, write me on Facebook. But, again, first I want to just state that, it's obviously something very senseless and ruthless, and my prayers and condolences go out to the close friends and family of Jessica. Part of me felt compelled to do this video is because I was looking online on videos, pertaining, to this assault and the death of Jessica, and there wasn't, there were some videos out there, but they weren't really that long. Ones I saw like 1, 2, 3 minutes long, and I wanted to do something that would give a little bit more time into this, if that makes sense. And because I feel like it doesn't, I understand when you're talking about like concise, news reports, they're not going to be that long, but, I wanted to do something that would be a little bit more extensive and lengthy, and, go more into this a little bit in detail through astrology. So anyway, well, the assault on Jessica, this took place on June 24, 2025, 2:10 p.m. There was a website called Audacity or something similar to that, that stated that this was the time that, she had been, had been attacked on June 24, 2025. This took place in Hollywood, California. And I believe also on our GoFundMe page, it may have the details on this as well. But right now I have 2:10 p.m. And that's, the time that I'm using for this event. And the first thing up is, of course, when, when I look at the, event chart, which is a little bit odd to me, having, the ascendant, which is the face of the event, being in Libra, because, Libra is very, tactful, diplomatic, refined energy. But what I can see with, this Libra energy, maybe there was some issue regarding, I don't know if it was some fairness, that was seen, by the manager, or, unfairness, which what led to this. But I think this is more about justice and the law. Maybe that's why we're having, Libra on the cusp of the first house as the face of this event. Now, another thing is that, of course, the sun, is in the zodiac sign Cancer, at this time. And, that's the, basic, the sun is, the expression, the basic energy. And, of course, it's really a lot of, emotion, at this time, and sensitivity. When the sun is in, traverses Cancer, I believe, people are generally more sensitive in terms of, in general, whether it's to criticism or ridicule or what have you. And it's very emotional, energy. And you had Jupiter making the conjunction to the sun at this time, very close and tight conjunction, actually, which can enlarge, those qualities, as I've talked about in previous videos, that Jupiter can be paradoxical. It's very benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand, and it can enlarge, those Cancerian, type of, the emotional energy connected with it. And also, the moon was in mercurial Gemini, and that's a lot of moon. When the moon is in Gemini, the the energy can be more, excitable and high strung. Moon is also connected with our reactions and responses, and that makes made a conjunction to Jupiter at this time as well. So that could have further enlarged the emotional energy. You also have a stellium with the moon in Gemini, and then Jupiter in Cancer, then followed by the sun in the zodiac sign Cancer. And when you look at, a stellium in astrology is a series of conjunctions that involve 3 or more planets. And when you look at a stellium, you break it down, systematically. What starts out with the first planet it culminates with the final one. So when you have, the moon in Gemini, it's a lot of, starts out with a lot of high strung, excitable, emotional energy. And then, Jupiter, could be over, that could, could be over some belief, or it could be very, self-righteous, type of energy, followed by, Jupiter is recklessness, and then followed by the sun in the zodiac sign Cancer. The sun is connected with life in astrology. So it shows that, this is more impactful in somebody's, life at this time. And that's, unfortunately, it did ultimately end somebody's life. Now, some other things, in this chart as well, I found interesting. Okay, you have, Taurus falls on the 8th house cusp of death, but, you think when you look at it, Taurus on the 8th house, that you would think that would signify, some death that could be peaceful. But when you look at the fact that the ruler is in the 8th house, which is Venus, that tells me that, it's, 8th house is also, murder and a crime. 8th house is connected with crime. So the fact that you have the ruler of the 8th house posited in the 8th house can indicate a crime that may have been connected with some kind of, jealousy, and 8th house is murder. Now, it's interesting because some, people in astrology believe that Uranus, has a connection with the brain, and that falls in the 8th house of death. And Jessica had been declared brain dead. And Uranus falls at the 29th degree, which is a degree of culminations and endings. Now, another thing, too, that I noticed is that in this chart, you also have, Mercury, making an opposition to Pluto. Mercury has a connection with the brain and breathing, and Pluto is about control. So it can show, the issues with the control, unfortunately, with matters that are associated with one's, breathing and matters with the brain as well. Now, what's interesting too, looking at this chart, what could be compelling actually, is the fact that, okay, as of right now, the person that, committed that crime, at least the primary suspect, I believe, is still at large. And, the 8th house, is connected, with murder, and I would say murder is, and it's criminal profiling. You have Saturn, which makes a semi-Saturn in Aries, making a semi-square to that 8th house cusp. And Saturn is connected with authority. And what's interesting, you have the semi-square with that. I think that may be making it tougher to find this primary suspect who, basically murdered Jessica. And you also have, and even Neptune in Aries, making, the semi-square, aspect to the eighth house cusps. Neptune is connected, with elusiveness. And it shows, I think it shows that it was going to be harder to really capture this person that in all likelihood did murder, ultimately wound up murdering, or, the actions led to the death of Jessica. And you also have as well, Jupiter is at least a loose semi-square aspect to the eighth house cusp. Jupiter is connected with the law. So that is, that tells me that, it's telling to me that could indicate that it was going to be tougher for the law to be able to apprehend this murder. The fact that the eighth house cusp is in Taurus shows that this person may be somebody that's very, stubborn, obstinate, very resolute, and is stubbornly doing what, she can in order to not be apprehended. And the thing is too, looking at this as well, now you have, Saturn making the conjunction to Neptune in the sixth house of work. Now Saturn is connected with authority, being in aggressive, combative, quarrelsome Aries, and then the conjunction to Neptune shows it could reflect the confounding, senseless behavior, by this person. And the thing, too, is another aspect to me that stands out is that there is an inconjunct aspect between Mars in Virgo and Pluto in Aquarius. Inconjuncts in astrology can often be about adjustments. It can indicate too much or too little of something. Mars is about anger and aggression, volatility. Pluto is about control. So what it's telling me that there may have been too much or too little control in matters pertaining to anger and aggression. And in this case, sadly, it was really too little control. In that Mars in Virgo can indicate, volatility associated with an employee, and there may have been a lot of, lashing out with a lot of, criticism and derogatory remarks, with Mars being in Virgo, and it was also at a critical degree, at 4 degrees. So that to me is significant right there. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that stands out. Also, too, Neptune in Aries made an inconjunct aspect to Mars in Virgo. And again, the inconjuncts in astrology can be about adjustments. It can indicate too much or too little of something. And you have Mars, again, which is very quarrelsome energy, very aggressive, combative, volatile energy. Neptune is more, passive. So when you have, the inconjunct with Mars and Neptune, it could either indicate too much or too little aggression and, forcefulness, and not enough passivity or being passive, or the other way around. But unfortunately, in this case, I think it manifested sadly in too much, combative energy, too much, anger, volatility, aggression. And, the thing is, you look at this, and it's just, obviously this is just a terrible thing, that took place. And I think for me, I do hope that the person that did this, and of course, I hope that, she's apprehended, brought, and all, because my understanding, she still is at large. And the fact that I hope she is prosecuted to the fullest and receives the maximum punishment for this. There is, no excuse. I mean, I understand, people have, I don't know, what actually, precipitated this and what may have been said to the person that pretty much killed, Jessica, but it doesn't justify, brutally attacking a person and, ruthless behavior. This is not something, that anybody would condone, anybody with a right mind would condone. There's obviously this person has, I'm sure has some kind of issues. And, you see something like this happen and somebody committing, such a senseless, volatile act. And, she's basically, this person has ruined her life by doing so. I mean, she could run and evade, law enforcement. And even if she does so indefinitely, she's going to be looking over her shoulder indefinitely and constantly be dominated by fear and worry because of this and not have any, peace, in her life. And it's just, to me, I can never really fathom or understand why people would commit such a senseless act, and they ruin their lives in the process in doing so. And this person that did this to Jessica is likely somebody relatively young, and basically going to ruin her whole life because of this. Again, I just want to offer prayers and condolences to the close friends and family of Jessica, and I hope that justice is served quickly, and this is not something that is stalled much longer, and that this person is apprehended, because she needs to face justice for the action, and I do hope that she is prosecuted to the fullest in this matter. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.